Hello and welcome back to the Salty Sarge podcast. I am your host, Tech Guy, joined as always with the Salty Sarge.
Hey, buddy.
And Sarge, you want to tell them what we've been up to lately?
Well, we kind of had a little snafu where I was at work and I was involved in a car accident. I was training I'm a trainer, so we know that, and I was training a younger officer. Yep. And he was in his final phase, and we decided to make a traffic stop, and we got hit by a bit large truck that has a U and a P and an S on it, and nailed it on the passenger side, and it kind of messed me up pretty good. I'm still down. It happened about a month ago, so we really haven't been able to do anything. We can't go into a lot of details about it, but that's what happened. And one thing I will say is I was badly burned by an airbag that caught my uniform on fire. So if anybody's listening to this and you've ever heard of that, chime in, let us know, or I'm curious about this because I don't want this to happen. It's a passenger side airbag that deployed like it was supposed to, but my side of my uniform was burned, 3 layers of clothing, and it caused third-degree burns on the side of my lower abdomen. So
yeah, it was gnarly.
Yeah, so I've been recovering from that, and then my back and my hip is jacked up. But, it was a bad deal, but we walked away from it okay. It was a scary event. It was probably one of the worst crashes I've ever been in on duty. So, and the crazy part is my dad had his major crash less than a mile from where mine was. So it was pretty wild. And there was a lot of, it was a pretty easy day. It happened in the morning, and I never saw it coming. So kind of scared the living crap out of me there for a second. So
I think that kind of scared everybody. And
put me in the hospital for a little bit, and but I'm recovering good. It's been over a month, so we're still working through that. I'm still off, so I'm not working currently. But yeah, moving on. That's why we kind of been delayed. A lot of people have been kind of hounding us about getting back out here and doing stuff. So apologies. It's kind of I did not expect that to happen.
Yeah,
it wasn't planned.
We had some major plans, and
it kind of messed up the year. So 2025 right now has been kind of a dumpster fire for me. So, but we'll get through it, and spring is in the air. So we'll move on. We'll try to get some more going. We'll try to keep up with it more once we get some time. So
we're finally getting some warm weather. Although we're gonna blow away if we try to go outside and enjoy it.
Yeah, no doubt.
We had about 35, 40 mile an hour winds. That was a crazy day.
Yeah, that was a crazy. One of them was like 70. I think the max they got was 70 miles an hour, which is nuts.
82.
82? That's like a small tornado, man.
In the Northwest, yeah.
That's a small tornado.
That's an insane amount of wind.
Yeah.
But we persevered. We came out the other side, and we are back for another episode of the Salty Sarge podcast.
That's right. And we have a special guest with us today, which I've been wanting to bring on guests, and so have you. And we have a good friend of mine, Tommy.
That we conned into... We asked him, and he was excited to be here.
As we kind of did it at the Salty Sarge after hours whenever we were kind of heavily bringing in some beverages.
Allegedly.
And then the next day, we're like, oh, man, I don't know. My head hurts. I don't know. So, but here we are. So Tommy is prior law enforcement. He was a county sheriff, and you were a police officer with a PD somewhere, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. How many years did you have?
I got out when I had 11.
11, okay.
Yep.
So we're just kind of, he's got some stories maybe. We'll ask some questions because I don't know. I never worked the county side of it, so I'm always curious about how stuff works that way. But you were a supervisor too?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So we'll kind of get your background. When did you start off? And we'll just kind of dive into it if you're all right with that.
Yeah, go for it.
Where did you start out in law enforcement? How old were you?
So I was 21. Went through the cops program at a Western Oklahoma State College down in Altus.
Okay.
And as soon as you graduated, you went through all the, the physical classes of driving and the firearms and the custody control, all that. And as soon as I was done with that, I got hired at a small department out there, Hobart Police Department.
So you're basically certified then from that school?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's an associate's degree, but you're at the end of it, you're CLEET certified.
Okay.
Yeah, you're all.
And so if you wanted to go, say you wanted to go to like Texas, would you just have to take their exam?
Yeah, it'd be the same, just like CLEET.
Just like
if,
CLEET, okay.
Yeah, if you're,
but would you have to go back through the Texas version of CLEET, or would you just take their tests?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. That's a good question. I
Yeah.
didn't know, because if it's a class that's offered in college, I didn't know.
Yeah, because CLEET is just Oklahoma. You know,
Right.
there's Post that does a lot of different states. But
Yeah, and for us normies, what is CLEET?
the Council of Law Enforcement Training, basically it's a certification organization and training organization for.
So if you have like a
certification.
small municipality, like say you have like a small town or a city that has a smaller number of people, like this, the larger municipalities will have their own academies, and like ours, and we just fall in line with CLEET. But then they'll say, what they would always do is they have like a PowerPoint and they go, okay, this is what CLEET wants us to know. And then they'll go, okay, put that aside. This is what we're going to teach you. So,
yeah, always.
So what happens is, say like you have like a small city, they may send, or sheriff's department may send, they have a place in Oklahoma where everybody goes. Yeah. And it's a big school, and you go there like class. It's like college. And they beat the crap out of you. They teach you to drive, shoot, and then once you pass your CLEET exam, that's basically your license to be a police officer. So the crazy part is like a nurse has a license, right? Like my wife has to renew her license. We don't, but if you retire and you want to keep it going, you still have to maintain so many hours of training, things like that. So our department sets up CLEET mandates, state mandates, where we have to have. It could be like 40 hours of training a year.
It was about 40 when I left. But I don't
so our
remember
department will spread out. They'll come up with stuff that the state wants us to do, and then they'll have like drive. We do driving. We do combative training every year, twice. You know, that's like 4 hours. I think they call it 5 hours a piece, and then they'll have like some kind of computer training or something. But you have to maintain those. Like my dad's retired, so. For him to maintain those standards when he worked for the AG's office, he had to go in and look up classes and stuff on his own. So as long as it was sometimes like El Reno, the college out there, Redlands would offer. They would offer like a CLEET course, like, hey, there's a class on burglaries or rape. Human trafficking or
crime scene photography, blood splatter,
like larceny stuff, credit card fraud.
A lot of people go into specialties like they'll want to be firearms instructors or they want to be drivers instructors, and the CLEET's the regulatory agency that does all that.
And I think most of the states have those programs. I know with Austin and BIA, that was in Artesia, New Mexico. So they had, when I went to his graduation, there was a bunch of different agencies, like all different kinds of people in different uniforms. I was like, what is this? And that's what CLEET would do too. So if they have a big graduation, if you went down there would be all kinds of officers from different agencies there. So
now, is it specifically for law enforcement officers, or does they do like the security training?
They certify security. Like when I left law enforcement, I went and got my armed security license, which there was no training for me since I was law certified. Yeah, they just issued the license, but they'll do the armed security guard or unarmed security guard,
like private investigator work. Yep. My dad did the same thing. So you can go work for like attorneys and stuff, or these state agencies, like the AG's office requires it. Yeah. But if you have 30 years as a detective with a large municipality, and you run all those different kind of areas, white collar, homicide,
rubber stamp you and push you through.
Yeah, they're going to say, "Hey, here's your license." I mean, a lot of the guys on our department taught a lot that you could teach at OSU OKC. They used to offer it. They sold that off. All that, there's a driver instructor thing right there. That's going to be just nuggets of knowledge. That's going to be a 300 to 400 bed mental health hospital.
So where the OSU driver's training is?
The driver's trainer is now gone.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's what I took
it's there,
training,
but nobody's using it. So my coordinator was like, because we used to train over there, so now we have to go to there's some school, Votech down in Norman, that they use their driver course until we get a bigger one. But yeah, so that's going to be which I was thinking, great, that might be in my area in the future. But But they need to bring something like that back because that's a big problem right now.
Like,
mental health,
like Griffin that they had in Norman,
where you could have a large facility and home a lot of people.
I don't know if you've been there, but that was a massive mental health facility that. And I don't know what they've done with it since.
It's all shut down. Left. It's a smaller, that all changed with Obamanism. I'll just drop that name. That's where the mental health went to crap because, and that's why you have a large increase of homeless people because I would say about 60 to 70% of them are all from facilities because it was a voter thing. It's like, well, you're keeping people against their will. Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
Okay. You got someone that's hello, Clarice, in a room. Do you really want that person out there, walking amongst us? No. And that's why you have a lot of these calls where you got a guy with a machete walking down the street, or you got a guy with a wood stick, or you got a guy the other day who beat the crap out of a dog and people called him and put him in jail.
I'll tell you the story about Chicken Wing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So Chicken Wing was from one of those facilities and got kicked out. And forgive me on the years, probably 2007 or 8, something like that. So it's been a while. And Chicken Wing was what he was. That's not a name I came up with. That's what his friends and family that was around him called him because he had an arm that didn't work. It was chicken winged. It was stuck in that position, and he was in the mental health facility like that, and they all were getting shut down. And so a whole bunch of people went to live at this. I don't know what it was. It was out in the county. It was a big, giant 2-story building that obviously used to do something besides just be a house. And but these people that owned it decided it would be a good idea just to put them all in that house, and they could give them their monthly SSI checks. So there's a whole bunch of mental health patients that are living together with no supervision that are paying their SSI checks to these people that are supposedly bringing their medications to them once a week. And Chicken Wing got mad because a guy owed him $1, I think is what it was. So Chicken Wing stabbed him in the ribs and killed him dead right there in the middle of the hallway.
Oh, wow.
And when I came up to Chicken Wing, I said, what happened? He said, the guy owed me $1, stabbed him in the ribs because he wouldn't pay me my money.
And he's DRT.
The guy, oh yeah. When we got there, he was dead. And
that means dead right there.
Dead right there.
Yeah. Or deader than a hammer. You heard that? Deader than a hammer. He's deader than a hammer, man.
Yeah, we use DRT a lot.
We use DRT a lot, too.
So Chicken Wing got, obviously taken in and questioned, and OSBI helped with that investigation, and they decided in their wisdom that we would take him over to try to get him checked into the mental hospital. So they took him over to, it's been a while, so forgive me, but they wanted to evaluate him. To see if he could be put on a hold, and they went over there and said he was held for 72 hours for evaluation, obviously. Well, then they didn't press charges or couldn't press charges because now he's in the mental facility and got away with it. And then we found out later that was his second homicide. The second person he had killed and went to a mental hospital instead of going to prison.
Which is crazy to me because my understanding was with mental health in Oklahoma is crimes supersede a crime supersedes the mental health because we had a lady set a room on fire at a hotel. She's like, the ghost came at me, and we walk up to the door and there was smoke coming out. She had disabled all the smoke detectors and stuff. And you're like, what the crap? And she goes, and her boyfriend was standing there and he's like, hey, she needs mental health help. And I'm like, no, she's going to jail, brother. She flat out just set a occupied hotel on fire. So no, she's going to jail. Mm-hmm. And then once you get in jail, that's where mental health court kind of steps in and forces her to on that note, because nobody got hurt, but it could have potentially been a problem. But it was enough for her to get forced to get help by the court. So that situation there with homicide like that, I guess
there
is
was
kind of weird to me.
something I think it was a weak decision by the DA. I think the way it was, because I wasn't an investigator on that. I was a supervisor for the shift, so we, how that worked. I locked down the scene, handed over, waited on detectives, and then I just got feedback, after overtime, but I wasn't directly involved in that part. But from what I understood, it was basically the DA said, well, y'all took him to the mental health facility, so you think he's insane, and you should have taken him to jail and let that work its way through. So it was kind of sounds like a blame game to me, but I wasn't involved. So
you graduated college, 21, went and worked small town.
Yep, small town, 5,000 population, small little one or two officers at a time out there, usually one officer out.
Now I do know a funny story about the small town thing because your daughter. This is where I didn't know you or your wife, but I was doing a police event at the school. Mm-hmm. And your daughter was on my daughter's sports team, and she walked up. She goes, "Yeah, I know what police cars look like." I go, "How do you know what police?" Well, my daddy told me, or my mommy ran from my daddy when he was a police officer.
Sure as heck did.
And I go, interesting, and that's how I figured out. I went up to you and said, "Hey." I go, your daughter told me a story. He goes, yeah, I was parole officer. And then that's kind of how we kind of became kind of friends. But what was that story?
So there's only several stop signs in this town. It's tiny. And so there was one that I like to sit at. And you can see the four-way and not be seen. So I was sitting there, and my wife comes through and had a little S10 pickup. And that stop sign was about 2-3 blocks from our house. Not very far at all. And she comes in this little white S10. I see her coming like a hot rod, and she went through that stop sign, didn't even think about it. And of course, I was going to mess with her and turn the lights and siren on. I was going to pull her over and give her a hard time. Joke was on me because she didn't stop.
She
just kept going all the way to the house and got out and grabbed the groceries and the kid and said, "What do you want?"
I can see your wife so doing that. As the years went on, and I've been around your wife, it's like I could imagine that situation of her doing that, like giving you the bird as she's going in, because that's what my wife would do too.
Yeah, she didn't hesitate at all. And I explained to her, because I was all cop back then. I was fresh rookie. Wore the badge to sleep and everything, It was my life, and I was like, "You can't do that."
Crusade. It's always a crusade at that point.
Disrespectful, and everybody out there seeing it, and how am I supposed to stop anybody else and take them to jail if my own wife won't stop? And of course,
you kind of felt like I would say you probably felt like Barney Five at that point. If you really think about it,
it was embarrassing for sure.
Just you're like, citizens arrest, citizens arrest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is definitely interesting.
He's like, Barney, take the ticket. You got to be kidding me. I mean, I can just imagine, and how I know you, I could just see you're younger as I'd be pissed. I'm not like I'd get pissed.
My face was probably pretty red. I wasn't a happy camper about it, and but thinking about it later, it's like, well, I was going to mess with her.
Right.
The whole traffic stop was to mess with her, and then she turned it on me, and that's why I was mad. Probably
that's funny. So, how long were you an officer in that small town?
About a year. I did probably about a year there, and then it was just so small, there was nowhere to go. Like I think there was probably 7 officers total, maybe. Couple per shift, so
boring.
It was definitely boring. I mean, I saw my first meth lab there, my first dead body, all those kind of, all my first happened there.
What years was that when you started?
2002 to 2003.
Okay, yeah, because meth was, I remember my dad he was a supervisor over, they called it technical, but it's like SCSI, but they had to go and process a lot of meth labs. Yeah. And that was kind of the newest thing going around. So
the meth labs were terrible then. Like when I got back to the city here at the county, it was at least 1 a month, 2 a month we were having to have guys going and clean up. But down there, it was, we would get with the sheriff's office or they would do all that stuff for the PD, and that's where there was nowhere to go at the police department. I was going to be an officer till somebody retired, and I was going to move up to sergeant and run a shift for a little while, but there was one detective. He had been there 20 years, so he's going to be there another 20. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? So I left there after about a year and went to the sheriff's office down there. Kind of got screwed on that deal, but it was basically the sheriff was retiring, and the undersheriff said, I want you to come work for me. You'll be dispatching jailer or whatever for about a month till he finally retires, and then you'll take my, the bottom spot when I move up and all that. So I took that job, and the sheriff retired. I guess they didn't want to promote him, but they did. The sheriff, the commissioners did, and then told him he couldn't backfill. So then I was stuck as a dispatch jailer for 6 months. Of course, I immediately started applying out.
So you did, but sometimes I wish that I think some officers, we should have a part of a program where you go work in dispatch.
I agree.
Or at least sit with them, watch, because a lot of times you don't even know where the dispatchers are. You don't know what they do. For the longest time, I didn't know where they were. And they never really got to see you. And then I got to where I was training rookies, and they built a new dispatch center, and we would go down and kind of meet with them and talk to them and say, hey, this is what they do. And it was kind of a unique process, but they enjoyed that because they're like, oh, well, you're so-and-so. And they put a face with the name, and then they would tell you stories about like, man, one night you said this. And I called this guy a liar one time. He just sidebar story real quick. He crashed it. We find this car just crashed out, and it was like way off the road, and it looked like a Dukes of Hazzard kind of situation. Right. It was a construction site, big old mound of dirt, and it's on its side. So we run it, and this other kid is like a little detective. Somehow he pulls up a picture of the owner. Well, this car drives by, and there's a guy looking at us. He goes, "That's the guy right there." And he's just kind of looking in his car. 5 minutes later, he calls in and says, "Hey, he needs to report his car stolen." Same guy. And I was like, I get already go, "Headquarters, you close out." They go, "That guy's a liar. We just saw him. He's a liar." Like, he just crashed his car. He go get a record and come get it. And then that dispatcher, that she made fun of me on that deal for months about that. But anyway, I really do think that perspective, that would be definitely perspective, and working in a jail too, because you can learn how to communicate better with people and do more compliance control, or you're being, because I have relatives and good friends that worked at prisons and jails, and I could not do that. No. I mean, you're in an environment where you're completely outnumbered. Yep. And you have no guns. Yep. I mean, and you really have to show them respect to kind of get respect, and you can't just go in there cocky and be a dickhead, or they're going to shank you. Oh yeah. So
yeah, it's a dangerous environment. And, it's even, you're talking about the dispatchers not knowing what's on the other side. We knew all the dispatchers. I mean, they were in our office. Like, there's only one police department, a small little bitty, not much bigger than a shop. That it's a small police department. It's an old, I think it was an old like administrative for the school or something. It's a tiny little building. But anyways, the dispatcher's sitting right in the middle of it at the PD, and them like your neighbor. As a matter of fact, one of my dispatchers is literally my next door neighbor. And I live right next door. So you know them, which makes it. It makes it good and bad. So one of my first dead body was a car crash, and it happened to be the dispatcher that was working that took the call. It was I think it was her nephew.
Oh no!
And she took the call, and they were basically saying how bad it was, and she ran the tag and figured out who it was, and so we had to get somebody up there to relieve her, obviously, and that was a decapitation. Like, it was not good. That's a bad one. That was my first major crash. That was and it wasn't even in the city. It was just outside the city, but the county sheriff's.
How long were you on at that point?
Man, I probably hadn't been out of training. I'd probably been there 3 or 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
And I was the only one on duty. That's how small police departments work. You're trained now. Here you got midnights by yourself. See you later. And oh, yeah.
Did you have an FTO program?
We had, I guess.
Kinda. Hey, because I know a lot of smaller municipalities, they'll hire you and say, here's a gun, here's a car, here's a radio, and then you have so much time you can go to CLEET. But technically,
we had a lot of guys that were hired in. You had a year to go to CLEET, and there was guys that went the whole year and never went to CLEET. Oh my God! I had people that showed up there that worked for almost a year and then quit. Like, they worked a year with never going to CLEET, really. And the training program wasn't really. It was basically you're going to ride around with the dude for, however long until that officer that's been there a little while says he's not going to get us in trouble, or he's not going to get killed, or whatever the criteria was. But
that's, you can learn a lot just by sitting in a police car watching. It's really kind of like, hey, go with God in some situations. If you can't talk. And I think there's a lot of younger people now that come in this profession, and they don't understand that you got to communicate. And, my Ricky would always say, man, you talk really good with people. I'm like, that's your damn job.
That's it. That's your whole job.
You just talking to them, you can really solve a lot of crime. You can figure out situations. You can, it's great. It's just, that's what you're doing, is communicating. And if you can't do that, you're not. And I've told officers that, if you can't get up there and talk to these people, you don't need to be here.
No.
And that's just
when
part
you
got
to read the room.
Yeah,
you got to read the room. You got to know when you have to be aggressive. The stuff with the cameras weren't a thing.
I know, yeah.
And there's certain people that you had to talk to. You had to baby them. There's certain people that you had to try to convince to do things. There's people that you had to demand, that they do what you want them to do. There's people that you had to talk in their language, which is, out where I was, white trash, just... Mm-hmm. Just cuss them out, basically. You had to talk to them like they need to be talked to. And you have to be able to read the room. And that's one thing that rookie cops fail at all the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I don't think that's a exclusive thing to law enforcement.
Probably
I think pretty much every career field has that same problem, the younger generation not being able to communicate properly. Yeah. And it's really affected a lot of workspaces because of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's, and the bad part is you can get like managers that do know how to effectively communicate and have this kind of aggressive tendency, and they know that they can walk all over these younger people who don't know that, like, if you communicate, you can stand up for yourself and still not get fired. But they just let them walk all over them because they don't know how to handle that situation, and they haven't learned how to effectively communicate.
Well, I'm talking about learning a lot riding a car. That's why I was a cop, because I was in college, the same college I was going to be in the computer field. So I was going to, all my course sets were going into computer. I hadn't decided at that point if I was going to be programming or software or hardware, or kind of what part of that. I bet
you wish you stuck with that, huh?
Not really, to be honest. So I took my first kind of computer class, and it was introduction to programming, basically. And I got in there, and this woman started talking in zeros and ones and rambled on for a couple minutes in zeros and ones. And at the end of it, she said, I just said my name is whatever the heck her name was in binary. Basically, trying to describe that you're writing in another language, that it's just like learning a second language to learn binary. And I said, cool, and I peaced out and literally went and withdrew from the class. I was so put back by how boring. She just wasted 5 minutes of my life to talk in zeros and ones to make that point. And I decided I don't want to do the programming part, but I have to take that class. I don't know what I want to do. And I was taking a sociology class, and then the professor happened to be the head of the COPS program there. And he was a Lawton police captain, retired. I believe he had retired at that point.
See, that would have been awesome to have that. My sociology professor was just the most boringest guy. But I guarantee you that guy,
Mr. Carden.
Yeah, I bet he made the class fun, and it was just a try, because he probably had good stories, and
that's all he did.
And that's sociology. I mean, that is what we do. I mean, we are out there messing with so many types of people and culture, and that would have been. That's something I've considered down the road too. Was teaching
basically
class
this.
Like
I mean, my class was this, where you had, a grizzly old captain from Lawton PD, which he saw some stuff.
Oh yeah, that's a rough town, dude. Yeah,
and this dude, he was well built, just really muscled up dude, and he was just telling war stories and then trying to explain to us in sociology, using the textbook how that applied. And he encouraged anybody that was interested to go do a ride along. And I happened to have a dude in my class from Hobart PD that was going through. They hired him before he even finished the program, and so he kind of like CLEET. So he was working. He said, "Yeah, come do a ride along, man." So I went and did a ride along. And the very first night, there's a couple dudes working. I'm riding along with this dude, and he wasn't a good cop, but he was fun. But anyways, they got a possible burglar call in the small town, big deal, right? Out there, everybody, it's the sheriff, the troopers, the PDs, all, like, it's basically just help each other, because there's very rarely more than one.
You probably had, one or two assigned troopers that county?
Yeah.
Or sometimes they cover multiple counties, don't they?
There was 2 or 3 that I can remember.
Did y'all fight over, like, who worked the highway and, like, it crashes?
Not typically.
Okay, because that's all we fought over.
I mean, you had a couple highways that ran through there, but we would, if it was happening on the highway, we would call the troopers, and if they said, we're in 2 counties over, can you handle it? We'd handle it, or he would say, we'll be there in a minute. But,
okay.
But anyways, there was burglary in progress, and we went over there, and I was doing a ride along, and I was supposed to get out of the car, and so I'm sitting there, and the PD and a deputy sheriff went in to try to clear this house, and then here comes a bad guy crawling out the window and fell into a bush. By the time the trooper shows up, and I say, somebody's fell in that bush, and he runs over there and wrestling with him. I jump out and go to help, wrestling him up, and
you're hooked.
I went back and changed my major.
God, man! See,
I was like,
the bait is set.
Yep.
That's what was going to be one of my questions. Like, how'd you get into it? Like, was your dad in it? And
no.
What did your family think about? Like, what'd your wife? You were married at the time in college, or were you just getting married?
No, we were dating. So in college, we got married right after I graduated. I was a police officer at the time.
Oh, okay.
When we got married, but we were dating.
What was her thoughts on it?
I'm pretty sure she called me a dumb a couple of times, and thought I was marrying this guy who's going to be rich, working with computers, and I got saying you dumb
stuff. So, and that was like tech world. That was like kind of stuff we're coming on board. So, what's your dad think about it?
He didn't like it either. Nobody really cared for it. My dad was a mailman, worked for the federal government, made pretty decent money, at not really dangerous job, and
your brother's a fireman.
Yeah, he wasn't at the time. He was.
Has he been a fireman that as long as you've been a police officer? Was it a police officer or at the same time?
No, he's 3 years younger than me, and
okay.
He was still dabbling just out of high school whenever I became a cop. But
how long has he been a fireman? Over 20?
No, not yet. He's probably like 17 or 18 years.
Okay, so he's a little bit younger than me then.
He's 1983 is when he was born.
We're the same age.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he didn't go right into it out of high school.
Okay.
He jacked around for a little while, but.
So you were probably like me when I got on. I didn't know how much money I made. I really didn't care. I honestly didn't know.
I was making like $8 an hour at Hobart PD in 2002, which was not much above minimum wage.
And you were probably killing it too, like just loving it and just.
I didn't give. Yeah, I was having a good time and had my first kid when working at Hobart PD down there, Kaylee, and I went to work. There were several mistakes I made as a new guy, and one of them was when Renee was pregnant with her. I wanted to go work at the school. We had one school resource officer, and he had just left, so I took that job with the understanding it was going to be a temporary deal, so I could be off on the weekends and evenings and be there for Renee for the pregnancy and stuff, and turned out to be more permanent.
So you were an SRO?
For a little while.
Okay. Did you like that?
I hated it. Every minute of it.
Well, I think as a younger officer, I think it's a horrible spot.
Yeah.
But I went into it as I have, 16, 17 years. It's time for me to kind of get out of the jungle, if you will, and move into a position of, hey, this that really blew up in my face because it was worse at the school than it was on the street.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm just like, okay, this sucks. I went out and I popped smoke and unasked that job as quick as I could. I gave them 3 years and I was like, because I really had planned on doing the rest of my career there. And, oh man, god dang.
It was just a small town school. It was boring. There wasn't a lot going on. So I spent most of my time and this was pre-smartphone, if we can remember back to 2002. Yeah. So it's not like I could even sit out in my car and screw around on a phone. I literally sat there staring at, nothing.
Oh, and man. I think your experience was the opposite of that with a bigger city.
Yeah. Oh, it was a lot more. Just a lot of people relied on you. What patrol had no idea. They thought that campus spots, which we all went in the mindset that it was a chill spot, laid back, kids love you, teachers love you, principals love you, and oh my God,
they pretty much told me
horrible.
They said stay out.
Yeah, they did not like cops at all, and it was almost like you were an ambassador. Like my office was my little zone that they wouldn't ever come into, and then they expected me to and then they would say, okay, we don't need you to do this, and it was always unclear. It's like, well, why didn't you go over there? Because you told me yesterday not to do that. And it just, the stress of that. When I went back to patrol, I got to tell you, man, my wife immediately saw a change. She was like, you're a lot happier. This is where you need to be. And I liked it. Because the one good thing about being a patrol officer, I feel like a field officer, is you never know what your day is going to be like. I mean, to a point. Like on day shift, it's kind of a routine, but the radio, you don't know what's going to kick off out of that radio.
Oh yeah.
And that day, your 10-hour shift, you start, you come and you leave, and it's over.
Yeah.
And it happened yesterday, and tomorrow's a new day, and you didn't walk back into the same thing. Like that's what drove me nuts, was like, God dang, I got to see that same idiot.
Yeah.
That kid that gets away with everything, and I got to deal with him again.
Yeah.
Versus the street, it's like, you don't
usually see the same every day.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see the same guy. It's like a new flavor. So, okay, cool. So you did that, and then
I went to the sheriff's office down there for 6 months, dispatching and jailing, and then they let me go out on the street some, but like I said, I told you how all that worked out, but didn't work out too well. And that sheriff, I love the guy. He was a great dude named Buck, but the guy that got promoted sheriff, but he just, him and the commissioners didn't get along, and so it was never going to work out right. And when me and Renee got married, she decided she wanted to go back to the city, or she grew up in small town, Southwest Oklahoma, and I grew up in the city, and she wanted to go back, and we just happened to have an opportunity to go back, and I applied at small town PDs, Lexington PD. I applied at several places, Purcell, and ended up taking the job at Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, and that was like, I think, end of the year of 2003. When I came back there, bought my childhood home back from my mom, and moved back into my childhood home and went to work for Cleveland County.
And that was in Moore?
That was in Moore, yeah.
Okay.
And I was there till I left law enforcement. So that was that was my last PD. Or
what was like the straw that because there's a lot of, well, like me, for instance, like it's been a crusade for me, and to a point, and now I'm getting older, and it's like, I got injured in that crash, and I'm starting to think, okay, maybe it's time for me to move on from this job, like to something else. But I've got 18 years vested. I'd like to stay till at least my 20, and then I would like to just pop smoke and get out of there. So what transition? I mean, you just like, hey, you know what? I'm done with this. Like, what made it where you're at that level?
Well, mine was pretty easy. So, well, I say easy. It was a hard decision because I invested and went to college for it, and I worked my way up all the way. I was a sergeant there, which would probably be an equivalent to a captain at all we had was corporal sergeants and a major.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the sergeant was the top patrol supervisor that was available there. The major of patrol was admin. And so I'd worked my way all the way up to the top of what I wanted to do. I didn't really care to go much higher than that. And the sheriff had got elected again. He had been there for 4 years, and his undersheriff at the time, I thought was a really good guy, and he seemed like he cared about the guys. But then they brought in this chief deputy who is basically over all things. He's the chief of the sheriff's office, essentially, and he was a detective in the MPs. So as in the MPs, he was a detective, and then he went to Norman Police Department. He was a detective there, and he spent a lot of his time in child sex crimes and
so investigations. Who they put in charge of patrol people,
patrol, and the jail, and
which that's an outer that kind of. I feel like that detective folks sometimes are, especially supervisors, are kind of out of touch with.
That's
patrol
the problem.
Stuff.
So and my major at the time did a really good job at battling him on a lot of the stuff, but then he didn't win them all. And so I'm having to supervise these guys. So like we're gung ho. We're wanting to set arrest records for how much dope we can get off the street, how many dope dealers we can get. Like we had all these kind of goals internally that was all geared around protecting the citizens. Like we wanted to make the community better by taking away drugs off the street, catching burglars, and So
you wanted to do proactive policing.
We wanted to be proactive police, and he was okay with that, but he wanted us to just stay. He wanted us to do it like an investigator. So, prime example, one thing that I got into it with, he wanted me to write a guy up because within the first week of him being the chief deputy of operations, he went to Best Buy and bought every patrol deputy, and there was probably 30 of us, but bought everybody digital tape recorders from Best Buy, little $50 or whatever. So stick them in your pocket. And I was like, great, yeah, if we're doing interviews, like right now, we're having to just take notes or we don't really have a good way to record. That's awesome. He goes, no, yeah, if you interact with the general public, that'll be turned on.
What?
And I was like, what do you mean we're going to turn it on? Like he said, you're going to turn it on, you're going to download it to the computer every single night before they're going to download it every night before they live to this, shared drive. He had the IT guys make a folder for it. And I was like, that's not really reasonable.
No body cameras yet, right?
No, this was pretty.
Did y'all have dash cams?
We didn't have, no.
Or no, okay.
No, we didn't have.
So he wanted you to do that.
So yes, he wanted us to do that. Hell, we barely could get lights on our cars. I mean, I installed most of the LED light bars because the ones we had were the old analog ones, and half of them didn't even turn. They didn't do what they're it was so bad. And so I finally convinced them to buy LED light bars, and I had to physically put them on. Oh, wow. I had to do the mechanicking because our mechanic refused to do it.
Oh, wow.
So long story short, he wanted us to do the tape recorder. I said, yeah, any chance we get, we'll do that. And he said, no, it's going to be a violation of policy. I'm going to write a policy. And if they don't turn that on with every interaction with the public, it's going to be a violation of policy. I tried to explain to him that's not feasible. if you know how it is, you get behind somebody and you call out to dispatch, or they're doing something crazy erratic, and you turn your lights on to get them to stop or try to get them to stop, and they slam them damn brakes on, and everything in your car is sliding around because they shut it down on a 2-lane road, and you're trying to get your unasked out of your seat to get out of you don't want to be sitting in your car when somebody piles out there and they're ready to fight.
Right.
So you got to get out of your car. And I was trying to explain that to him. It's not feasible that that's going to happen every single time. And the first chance he got, he wanted me to write this guy up and put him on a written violation for not turning tape recorder on. I just refused to do it. And I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, you can write him up and write me up with him, or if you need to or whatever, but I'm not. That's unreasonable. Mm-hmm. And he didn't understand it. He said, well, other departments have these body cam or dash cams, but those are automatically turned on.
Mm-hmm. Like those lights go on, yeah.
Yeah, so those are automatically turned on. That's a reason that they're automatically turned on.
And troopers have those where they have like a microphone, and then they can turn it on or turn it off, and then you can. They don't have a body camera, but they're at the car and they have a microphone, so you can hear and they see they don't manipulate anything or anything like that.
And that's what I was trying to explain to him, is that those are automatically triggered for a reason, because it's not feasible to ask somebody to do that every time. So anyways, stuff like that. It was constant battles with this guy that he just wanted us running like a detective, and he didn't really have a lot of patrol experience. And so I fought that forever, and the sheriff got it reelected, which meant that guy was going to stay, which means I really didn't have a problem with the undersheriff or the sheriff. The sheriff, didn't seem to run things. He seemed to be the talking head.
The politician,
which is fine. That's typical. The undersheriff typically runs things, and as far as I could tell, I mean, I was removed enough.
Technically, from my understanding, you don't have to have any kind of law enforcement background to be an elected sheriff.
I can't remember. At certain size counties, you had to have CLEET certification, but you don't have.
Because you just be a politician, and then you get your undersheriff typically
correct.
It has experience in law enforcement of some kind, some capacity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they 100%.
But you'd be dumb to elect a guy that doesn't have any kind of strong background in law enforcement, if you think about it.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Okay. Well, and they're going, like right now, they've down there in Cleveland County, they elected an ex-Norman police officer. I think he got appointed by, the sheriff. The sheriff I was working for got run off. His budget was crap. I think he was probably facing some kind of criminal stuff from what I heard. It was not like he was stealing. It was so mismanaged, I guess, is what I was hearing, that he was going to be in trouble.
I feel like that's almost worse.
So from my understanding, county guys, they get a budget and they have to stick within that budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're responsible for it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's kind of scary.
So at the time,
might be a lot of stress.
I don't know if it's changed, but at the time, all elected officials were on a budget board in Cleveland County. So treasurer, assessor, county commissioner, sheriff, all of those were on a county budget board, and they'd have meetings. They say, this is our anticipated income this year. We're going to split it up like this, this, and this. And they have that budget board, and everybody agrees, and then you stay within that budget. I heard it went to where the commissioners took it back to where just the commissioners are on it. They don't give anybody else say. I don't know, But long story short, yeah, he got run off. But that's why it was easy for me, because retirement. So I'd been there probably 10 years, and to retire at sheriff's office, we don't have a pension. We didn't have the police pension. We have the OPERS retirement, which is your age and service years equal 90 when you can retire.
Oh, wow.
So I'm sitting there looking at it going, I'm 31, 32 years old with 10 years experience. So I'm at 42. And every year is 2 more years, because another age experience, so I'm sitting there going, man, I've got 25 more years at least, and I've been here 10 years already. Like, do I want to work till I'm 65 at the sheriff's office? Like,
ground pounding heck no.
Yeah,
man.
So it's like, I got to do so much time, and this guy that I'm working for is a jerk, and then the major that was fighting him, I don't really know. I don't care to know, really. I know that him and that chief didn't get along, that chief deputy. They were fighting pretty bad, and I got a call saying I need to come to the sheriff's office, and they told me basically that he had quit and he was turning stuff in, and they were talking about me going to, like, I was over 2 shifts. We worked 12-hour shifts. I was on days and nights. I was on days, but I ran the night shift too. So I had corporals that were on nights, and so I was basically like the 3 days we worked 12-hour shifts. I had corporals that ran the shifts, and then I ran the corporals.
Oh, okay.
So I could work when I needed to work.
So they reported to you. So you're like a captain, a Bhutar shift captain.
Correct,
okay.
Yeah. And we fought that for years, saying I couldn't even get into a command post on a manhunt because OHP was running it, and they wouldn't let anybody below the rank of captain in their command post. I was like, we don't have captains. I am the captain. Like, well, you have Sergeant Barton, so you can't come in here.
That's where you just want to be like, hang on one second.
Exactly.
Hey, I just got these bars out of my car. I'm a captain now. Oh, okay, come on in.
It was a bad deal. Like, we were fighting them internally. Why can we not? You don't have to change our pay. Just we need to be the equivalent of everybody around us. Like, I
think they are now.
They are now.
Yeah, I think that's strange because I had a lot of guys from my municipality go over to that agency a lot, and their budget got all shot to crap, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah. But that's why I left, because he was going to stay, the chief deputy was going to stay, the guy that was between me and him quit or got fired or whatever happened there. And I literally made the decision on the spot, because I said, what are you going to do about the major spot? And his response was, I'm not going to backfill it. I'm going to take that role. So the sergeants will answer directly to me. And I said, can I have a minute? And I stepped out in the hallway and called Renee. Like, literally right then, said, I'm going to be working directly for this guy. He's not going to backfill. That was my next step. That's where I should have been the next step. He's dissolving it, so now I don't have anywhere to go. And I can't stand the dude. I cannot answer directly to him. And she said, I've been waiting on this phone call for years. Turn your shit in and get the hell out of there. Nice. And we'll make it on my salary until you figure something out. And I did.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Salty Sarge Podcast. Check us out on Facebook or anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. We'll see you on the next one.